Rain hit the windows of Prague like small bullets in the dark. Apartment 214 smelled of metal and wet concrete. Police officers moved silently around the body on the kitchen floor. The victim was a young woman named Klara Novak, 26 years old. No criminal history, no enemies, no sign of forced entry. Detective Elias Voss stepped under the yellow tape and stared at the scene without speaking. Klara's eyes were still open. Her hands were folded neatly across her chest, as if someone had prepared her after death. But the strangest thing was the writing beside the body. 2 words written carefully in black ink. Anna Keller. Elias crouched beside the message. The letters were perfect, not rushed, not angry, almost respectful. Forensics found nothing, Officer Marek said quietly. No prints? Elias asked. Nothing. Weapon? Missing. Elias looked around the apartment. The windows were locked from inside. The front door showed no damage. Whoever entered this place either had a key or Klara willingly let them inside. A photographer snapped pictures while rain echoed through the room. Elias kept staring at the name. Anna Keller. It sounded familiar somehow, like a memory he could almost reach. Run the name, Elias said. Already did, Marek replied. No connection to the victim. Elias stood slowly. Family. Parents are alive. They never heard the name before. A cold silence filled the apartment. Then Elias noticed something strange near the table. A small burn mark on the wooden floor. Circular, I guess so. Elias touched the edge carefully. Fresh, very fresh. As if the killer had used heat for something. But for what? Suddenly, Elias's phone rang. The room froze around him. He answered immediately. This is Voss. The voice on the other side sounded nervous. Detective, we found another one. Elias felt the air leave his lungs. Where? Old Town District. 10 minutes away. His eyes slowly moved back toward the words beside Klara's body. Anna Keller. Again. When Elias arrived at the second crime scene, the streets were packed with flashing lights. The victim this time was a middle-aged man found inside a bookstore office, dead for less than an hour. Same condition. No weapon, no struggle. And on the wall behind the body were the same 2 words. Anna Keller. Elias stepped closer to the writing. Exactly the same handwriting. Exactly the same ink. The killer wanted police to connect the murders. Wanted them to follow the name. A nervous officer approached him carefully. There's something else. He handed Elias a photograph found in the victim's pocket. The image showed a group of people standing outside a building nearly 30 years earlier. Most faces were crossed out with black marker. Only one face remained untouched. A little girl staring directly into the camera. Written beneath the photo was a single name, Anna Keller. Morning fog covered Prague like a grey blanket. Elias had not slept once. The photograph from the bookstore office remained on his desk beside 2 cold cups of coffee. He stared at the little girl's face again and again. Anna Keller. Who was she? And why were people dying because of her name? Computer screens filled the dark office with pale blue light. Officer Marek searched every national database available. Birth certificates, school records, hospital archives. Nothing existed. It was as if Anna Keller had never been born. That's impossible, Elias muttered. Everyone leaves a trail. Marek rubbed his tired eyes. She doesn't. Elias leaned back in silence. The absence of records disturbed him more than the murders themselves. Someone had erased this girl completely, or hidden her very carefully. Then Marek suddenly froze. Wait, Elias looked up immediately. What? There's one match. He opened an old archived file scanned from paper records decades earlier. The file came from a psychiatric hospital outside Prague, closed after a fire in 1989. Elias stepped closer to the screen. Most of the file was damaged and incomplete, but one line remained readable. Patient reference, Anna Keller, age 9, status, missing after incident. Elias felt a chill move through him. What incident? Marek scrolled lower. Nothing else remained except one attached image. A blurry photograph of children standing in a hallway. One child's face had been scratched out violently. Before Elias could study it further, the computer screen suddenly went black. Marek cursed under his breath. What happened? The file's gone. What do you mean gone? Derated. Elias stared at him. Can you recover it? Marek typed rapidly. No. Someone remotely accessed the archive. From where? Marek checked the logs. His expression slowly changed. The access came from inside police headquarters. Silence filled the office. Someone inside the department had erased the file moments after they found it. Someone was watching the investigation. Elias grabbed his coat immediately. Come with me. They drove across the city through heavy rain toward the evidence storage building. If more hospital files existed, Elias wanted them before they disappeared too. The old archive room smelled of dust and wet cardboard. Shelves towered around them, filled with forgotten evidence boxes. An elderly clerk nervously unlocked a metal cabinet. The hospital files should all be here. Elias searched quickly through labeled containers. Then he stopped. One entire section was empty. Fresh scrape marks covered the metal shelf. Boxes had been removed recently. How long ago? Elias demanded. The clerk looked terrified. I don't know. Elias noticed the man's hand shaking badly. You do know. The clerk swallowed hard. A man came last night with authorization papers. What man? I never saw his face clearly. Why not? He kept his hood up. Marek suddenly walked toward the back corner of the archive room. There's blood here. Elias hurried over. Dark stains marked the concrete floor behind the shelves. Fresh, very fresh. Then they found the body, a young records employee hidden behind storage boxes. Her throat had been cut cleanly, and beside her body on the wall were the same words written in black ink. Anna Keller. Elias stepped backward slowly. The killer had been inside police archives only hours earlier, watching them, moving ahead of them, and now someone inside the department was helping cover every trace. Rainwater dripped from the subway ceiling onto the empty platform below. Elias stood beside Officer Marek, watching security footage frame by frame. The missing homeless man appeared briefly on the screen near midnight. Thin jacket, grey beard, nervous movements. He kept looking behind him as if someone was following him. Then another figure entered the camera view. Tall, black coat, gloves, face hidden beneath a dark hood. The homeless man froze instantly. For several seconds they simply stared at each other. Then the man slowly followed the stranger toward the tunnel entrance. The footage ended there. No cameras inside the tunnels, Elias asked. Most stopped working years ago, Marek replied. Elias hated the feeling growing in his chest. The killer was always one step ahead, always moving through places nobody watched anymore. An officer approached quickly. We found something deeper in the tunnel. The underground air smelled of rust and electricity. Flashlights cut through darkness as Elias followed the officers along abandoned service tracks. Old graffiti covered the walls. Broken cables hung from the ceiling like dead vines. Then Elias saw the body. The missing homeless man lay against the tunnel wall, dead less than an hour, no weapon, no signs of struggle, and beside him painted carefully in black ink were the familiar words, Anna Keller. Elias closed his eyes briefly. Another victim, another message. But this time something else had been left behind. Old photographs scattered across the ground around the body, dozens of them. Children standing inside classrooms. Children sitting alone in dark rooms. Children crying. Most photographs had dates from the late 1980s. Several faces were crossed out in black marker. But one girl appeared again and again. Blonde hair, pale eyes, expressionless face. Anna Keller. Marek picked up one photograph carefully. What kind of place was this? Elias turned the image over. A faded stamp covered the back. St. Dymphna Psychiatric Institute. The same hospital from the deleted file. Suddenly a loud metallic sound echoed through the tunnel. Everyone froze. Another sound followed deeper in the darkness. Footsteps. Running. Elias pulled his gun immediately. Move! The officers sprinted through the tunnel toward the sound. Flashlights shook wildly across the walls. For one brief second, Elias saw a silhouette ahead, tall, wearing black gloves, exactly like the witness described. The figure disappeared around a corner. Elias chased after it with his heartbeat pounding violently in his ears. But when he turned the corner, the tunnel was empty. Only darkness remained. Then he noticed a metal door slightly open nearby. Dust covered most of it, except for a fresh handprint. Gloved. Elias pushed the door open slowly. Inside was a forgotten maintenance room filled with old subway equipment. But one object stood untouched in the center of the room. An old television connected to a VHS player. The screen was already on. Static flickered across the dark room. Then the image changed suddenly. A videotape began playing by itself. Children appeared on the screen standing silently against a wall. Numbers were pinned to their clothes like prisoners. A man's voice spoke from behind the camera. Subject 13 refuses verbal response. A little blonde girl slowly lifted her eyes toward the camera. Anna Keller. The tape distorted for a moment. Then the girl whispered something barely audible. Elias stepped closer to hear it. The screen suddenly turned black, and written across the darkness appeared one sentence. She is still alive. The storm grew worse as Elias drove north through the mountains. Wind slammed against the car, while fog swallowed the narrow road ahead. Beside him, Marek studied the address written on an old hospital employment record. Dr. Victor Holden, former psychiatrist at St. Dymphna Institute, last surviving senior staff member. If he knows anything, why hide for 30 years? Marek asked. Elias kept his eyes on the road because he's afraid. The cabin appeared suddenly through the trees. Old wood, dark windows. Completely isolated. Smoke rose weakly from the chimney. Someone was inside. Elias knocked firmly on the door. No answer. He knocked again. Slow footsteps approached from inside. Then the door opened slightly. An elderly man stared at them with tired, bloodshot eyes. Before Elias could speak, the old man whispered nervously, "You should not have come here." Inside, the cabin smelled of medicine and burned paper. Stacks of documents covered every surface. The old psychiatrist's hands shook as he poured tea into cracked cups. "You know the name Anna Keller," Elias said. The old man froze instantly. Fear spread across his face. "I knew this day would come." Marek leaned forward. "Who was she?" The doctor looked toward the storm outside before answering. "She was a child. Part of the experiment," Elias asked quietly. The old man nodded slowly. "There were 12 children brought to St. Dymphna in 1987. Why? To study obedience." Silence filled the cabin. Elias stared at him coldly. "You experimented on children." The doctor's voice trembled. "We were told it would help treat trauma and violent behavior. But it became something else." He opened an old photograph album with shaking hands. Inside were images from the hospital decades earlier. Children sitting alone in white rooms. Doctors watching through glass windows. Some children crying. Some completely emotionless. "They isolated them for weeks," the doctor whispered. "No sunlight, no names, only numbers." Marek looked horrified. "What happened to Anna?" The old man swallowed hard. "She remembered everything." Elias leaned closer. "What does that mean?" "She resisted." The doctor's breathing became uneven. "They could not break her." One night, a fire started in the lower wing. Most records were destroyed, several children died, and Anna disappeared. Elias stared at the old man carefully. "You think she survived?" The doctor looked directly at him. "I know she survived." Thunder shook the cabin violently. Then suddenly the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Marek grabbed his flashlight immediately. "Power line?" "No," Elias whispered. Someone was outside. Footsteps circled slowly around the cabin through the rain. The old doctor backed away in terror. "He found me." Elias pulled his gun. "Who?" Before the doctor could answer, a window exploded inward. Glass shattered across the room. Marek swung the flashlight toward the darkness outside. But nobody was there. Only rain and trees moving in the wind. Then a loud crash came from upstairs. Elias rushed toward the staircase. A shadow moved briefly at the end of the hallway above. Tall, black coat, gone in seconds. Elias searched every room but found nothing. When he returned downstairs, Marek stood frozen beside the fireplace. The old psychiatrist was dead, a knife buried deep in his chest. Blood spread slowly across the wooden floor, and on the wall behind the body were the same words written carefully in black ink. Anna Keller. The cabin burned quietly in the cold mountain rain as forensic teams searched the scene. Elias stood outside beneath flashing police lights staring into the trees. The killer had entered and vanished like smoke. No footprints, no witnesses, nothing. Marek approached carrying a sealed evidence bag. "We found these hidden under the doctor's floorboards." Inside the bag were old employee records from St. Dymphna Institute, names, photographs, job titles. Some pages were burned at the edges. Others were stained dark with age. Elias flipped through them slowly. Doctors, nurses, security guards, administrators. Then his eyes widened slightly. Several names were already familiar. The bookstore owner murdered in Old Town. The records employee killed in police archives. Even Clara Novak. "What is this?" Marek asked. Elias kept reading carefully. These people all worked at St. Dymphna. Marek looked confused. Clara was 26. She couldn't have worked there in 1989. Elias pointed at another line in the file. "Her father did." Silence settled between them. Every victim had a connection to the Psychiatric Institute, some directly, some through family. The killer was hunting everyone tied to the experiments. Elias suddenly understood something worse. This was never random. Marek nodded slowly. "It's revenge." Back in Prague, Elias covered the investigation room walls with photographs and documents. Strings connected victims to hospital staff records. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Every dead victim shared one secret. They all helped bury what happened inside St. Dymphna. But one question still remained. Why leave Anna Keller's name everywhere? If Anna survived, why announce herself? Elias stared again at the photograph of the little blonde girl. Something felt wrong. The killer's actions were careful, controlled, Not emotional chaos, not blind rage. Every murder carried purpose, like a message. Then Elias noticed something strange in one hospital document. One line had been blacked out incompletely. Under the marker, he could barely read several words. Subject deceased after incident. Anna Keller. His eyes narrowed instantly. Deceased, not missing. He grabbed another file, then another. Different handwriting, different reports. Some said Anna escaped. Others claimed she died in the fire. The records contradicted each other completely. Someone had rewritten history many times. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Officer Lena entered the room looking pale. "You need to hear this." She placed an audio recorder on the desk. It arrived anonymously an hour ago. Elias pressed play. Static crackled softly. Then children screaming filled the room. Marek looked away immediately. A terrified little girl cried somewhere in the background. Voices shouted orders. Metal doors slammed repeatedly. Then a calm male voice spoke clearly. Subject Anna Keller shows continued resistance. The girl screamed louder. Another voice whispered nervously, "She remembers everything." Then came a single gunshot. The tape ended. Silence swallowed the room. Nobody moved. Elias slowly rewound the recording and listened again. Beneath the screaming, another sound existed faintly in the background. A train horn, very distant. His eyes lifted toward Marek. The tunnels. Marek understood instantly. The underground system. Elias grabbed his coat. "Whoever sent this wants us to find something." As they prepared to leave, Officer Lena suddenly spoke again. "There's one more thing." She handed Elias a recent photograph taken secretly from across the street. The image showed Elias entering police headquarters 2 nights earlier. Someone had circled him in red ink, and written beneath the picture were 4 chilling words. "You are part of this." Night covered Prague in heavy fog as Elias and Marek entered the abandoned underground tunnels beneath the city. Water dripped steadily from cracked ceilings. Their flashlights cut through thick darkness ahead. The old train horn from the recording echoed inside Elias' mind. Somewhere down here, the past was still alive. Rust covered the forgotten tracks. Broken signs hung crooked along stained walls. Most of the tunnels had been sealed for decades after a subway collapse in the early 1990s. Nobody came here anymore. At least nobody was supposed to. Marek stopped suddenly beside an old metal gate. "It's open." Fresh scratches marked the rusted chains. Someone had entered recently. Elias pushed the gate aside slowly. Cold air rushed from the darkness beyond. The tunnel narrowed as they moved deeper underground. Then Elias noticed children's drawings taped along the walls. Stick figures, black rooms, faces with crossed-out eyes. One drawing showed a little girl standing inside flames. Underneath was written a single name, Anna. Marek swallowed hard. This place feels wrong. Ahead of them stood a steel door hidden behind hanging cables. Unlike everything else underground, the door looked new. A keypad glowed faintly beside it. Elias examined it carefully. No dust. Someone uses this place. Before they could react, the door buzzed loudly and unlocked by itself. Both men raised their guns instantly. The steel door slowly opened inward. A long hallway stretched ahead, brightly lit by white fluorescent lights. The underground darkness vanished behind them. This place was active, modern, clean. Security cameras followed their movements from the ceiling. At the end of the hallway stood another door, slightly open. Elias moved toward it, cautiously. Inside was a large room filled with hundreds of photographs covering every wall. Victims, police officers, hospital staff, newspaper reporters, even politicians. Faces connected with red string like a giant web. But one section of the wall made Elias stop breathing. Photographs of him, leaving his apartment, entering restaurants, meeting informants, sleeping at his desk inside the station. Someone had watched him for weeks, maybe longer. Marek looked horrified. This is impossible. Then Elias noticed a desk in the corner, stacks of cassette tapes, hospital records, old newspaper articles about the St. Dymphna fire, everything the killer needed to track the survivors. But one object stood apart from the rest, a framed photograph of Anna Keller as a child. Fresh flowers sat beneath it, carefully arranged, almost like a memorial. Elias slowly understood the truth. Anna isn't the killer. Marek turned toward him. "What? This is mourning." Elias stared at the child's photograph. Whoever's doing this loved her. Suddenly, a metallic sound echoed somewhere deeper in the hallway. A door closing. Both detectives turned immediately. At the far end of the corridor stood another steel door, slightly open. A faint light came from inside. Elias approached slowly with his gun raised. The room beyond was completely dark except for a single lamp hanging from the ceiling. Under the light sat a woman chained to a chair. Long, pale hair covered part of her face. Her wrists were bruised heavily from the restraints, but she was alive, very alive. The woman slowly lifted her eyes toward Elias. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then she whispered in a weak, broken voice, "My name is not Anna Keller." The woman stared at Elias with exhausted, hollow eyes. The hanging lamp swung slightly above her, throwing shadows across the room. Marek carefully checked the corners for traps while Elias stepped closer. "Who are you?" he asked softly. The woman looked toward the steel door behind them before answering. "You should not stay here long. Answer me." Her cracked lips trembled slightly. "My name is Ava Richter." Elias studied her face carefully. She looked around 40 years old, thin, pale, covered with old scars across her wrists and neck. "How long have you been here?" "I don't know. Who brought you here?" She gave a weak laugh without humor. "The same people who created Anna Keller." Silence filled the room. Elias slowly crouched beside her. "You knew her," Eva closed her eyes. "She died a long time ago." Marek looked confused. "But the killer leaves her name at every scene." "Because Anna was innocent," Eva whispered. "She was the only one who tried to help us." Elias felt tension rise in his chest. What happened at St. Dymphna? Eva's breathing became uneven. "They told the world we were patients, but we were prisoners." Flashbacks seemed to move behind her eyes as she spoke. "They locked children underground for weeks. No sunlight, no names. They wanted to erase fear, to erase memory. But Anna remembered everything they did." Elias glanced toward the photographs outside the room. "She fought them?" Eva nodded slowly. "She tried to protect the others. Then the fire started." "What caused it?" Marek asked. Eva hesitated. "Anna did." The room fell silent. "She wanted the doors opened," Eva continued quietly. "She thought the fire would force the staff to release us. But the flames spread too fast." Elias stared at her carefully. "So Anna died?" Eva's eyes filled with tears. "I saw her body." Marek frowned immediately. "Then who survived?" Eva looked directly at Elias. "A different child escaped that night. Someone who later stole Anna's identity." Elias felt the entire investigation shifting beneath him. "The killer isn't Anna Keller." Eva shook her head slowly. "No. Then who is it?" Before she could answer, every light in the hallway suddenly went dark. The underground rooms vanished into blackness. Marek raised his flashlight instantly. Someone cut the power. Heavy footsteps echoed somewhere beyond the steel door. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. Eva's expression turned pale with terror. "He's here." Elias pulled his gun. "Who?" But Eva whispered only one word. "The survivor." The footsteps stopped outside the room. Silence followed. Then a distorted voice came through hidden speakers in the ceiling. "You were never supposed to find this place." Elias stepped toward the hallway carefully. "Show yourself." The voice laughed quietly. "You still don't understand what this is." Marek moved beside Elias with his weapon raised. "Where are you?" "You stand inside a grave," the voice replied calmly. "All of you do." Suddenly, screens across the hallway flickered to life. Old security footage appeared simultaneously. Children screaming inside locked rooms. Doctors watching behind glass. Armed guards dragging patients through corridors. Then one screen showed a younger version of Elias, police captain, walking inside St. Dymphna decades earlier. Elias froze instantly. Captain Novak, his own superior officer. The distorted voice spoke again. "He helped bury everything." Marek looked shocked. "That's impossible." Elias stared silently at the screen. The voice continued. "Everyone connected to St. Dymphna lied. Everyone profited, and everyone will answer for it." Then the monitors suddenly displayed a new image. Live security footage from police headquarters above ground. Officers running through hallways in panic. Blood covering the station walls. Bodies lying motionless on the floor. And written across the entrance in massive black letters were the words, "Anna Keller." Elias stared at the security screen in disbelief. Police officers rushed through smoke-filled hallways inside headquarters. Sirens screamed in the background. Bodies lay across the station floor. Someone had attacked the building. Marek grabbed the radio immediately. Static answered him. No signal reached underground. "We need to get out now," he said. But Eva shook her head weakly. "He wants you to leave." Elias turned toward her. "What does that mean?" "The survivor planned this. He's separating everyone." Before Elias could respond, the distorted voice returned through the speakers. "Detective Voss, you spent weeks chasing a ghost, but ghosts are only memories that refuse to die." The lights flickered again. Then every hallway screen displayed the same image. A child standing inside a burning corridor, face hidden by smoke. The voice continued calmly. "You want the truth? Then listen carefully. The image changed to old hospital footage dated October 14, 1989. Children were being evacuated through underground tunnels during the fire. Doctors shouted orders while alarms echoed everywhere. Then Elias saw her, Anna Keller, the blonde girl from the photographs. She held another child's hand while smoke filled the hallway around them. Suddenly, armed guards appeared at the end of the corridor. Gunshots echoed on the recording. Children screamed. The second child fell to the floor. Anna turned back to help. Then the ceiling collapsed in flames. The footage ended abruptly. Eva lowered her eyes. She died trying to save someone else. Elias slowly understood. The other child survived. Eva nodded. He took her name afterward. Why? Marek asked. Because he believed Anna deserved revenge. Silence filled the room again. Elias looked toward the dark hallway. All these murders. They were punishment, Eva whispered, for everyone who helped destroy us. Then she looked directly at Elias. But he isn't alone. Elias narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Eva hesitated nervously. After the fire, powerful people protected the survivors who stayed silent. Doctors, politicians, police officials. They erased records and paid witnesses. They buried the entire project. Marek looked stunned. And your captain? Eva nodded slowly. He helped move evidence for years. Elias felt anger rising inside him. Captain Novak had led the investigation from the beginning, which meant the killer always knew police movements, always knew where Elias would go next. The distorted voice returned one final time. You finally see the truth now. Then a loud metallic crash echoed through the hallway outside. The steel doors began locking automatically one by one. Emergency lights flashed red across the underground complex. Marek cursed under his breath. He's sealing the exits. Elias grabbed the chair restraints and freed Eva quickly. We move now. As they ran through the corridor, the walls around them suddenly lit with projected photographs. Victims, children, dead hospital staff, every face stared down at them like ghosts. Then Elias noticed one final photograph at the end of the hall. A younger Captain Novak, standing beside another man outside St. Dymphna. The second face was partially burned away, but Elias recognized him instantly, his own father. Elias stopped walking completely. His heartbeat slowed into cold silence. Marek looked back. What is it? Elias could barely speak. My father was there. Eva stared at the photograph with fear in her eyes. He funded the experiments. The world around Elias suddenly felt unreal. Everything connected back to him. The killer had not chosen Elias randomly. He had been part of the story from the very beginning. The underground tunnels shook as heavy metal doors slammed shut behind them. Red emergency lights flashed across the corridor like bleeding wounds. Elias could barely hear his own breathing. His father's face remained burned into his mind. Funding the experiments, standing beside Captain Novak outside St. Dymphna, everything suddenly made horrifying sense. The killer had chosen Elias long before the first body fell. Eva grabbed his arm tightly. You cannot stop now. Elias forced himself forward. They reached a maintenance staircase leading toward the surface. Marek pushed the door open carefully. Cold night air rushed inside. Police sirens echoed across Prague above them. Smoke rose in the distance from police headquarters. When they arrived at the station, chaos covered the streets. Ambulances blocked the entrance. Officers carried injured people through shattered glass doors. Blood stained the lobby floor. Elias moved through the destruction in stunned silence. Walls were covered with black ink messages. Anna Keller, again and again. Like the station itself had become part of the killer's memorial, Officer Lena approached with tears in her eyes. Captain Novak is gone. Elias looked at her sharply. What? He disappeared before the attack started. Marek cursed quietly. He knew. Lena nodded weakly. Security cameras were disabled from inside his office. Elias walked toward the captain's office without speaking. The door hung partially open. Inside, files covered the desk in rush disorder. Drawers had been emptied, computers destroyed. Novak had erased everything before fleeing, but one object remained untouched in the center of the desk. An old cassette tape. Elias pressed play immediately. Static crackled softly. Then Captain Novak's voice filled the room. If you are hearing this, I am already dead. Elias exchanged a glance with Marek. The recording continued. We were told the project would help dangerous children. But St. Dymphna became something evil. They tortured those kids. They buried bodies underground. They paid us to stay silent. Novak's breathing shook badly on the tape. I tried to protect the records after the fire. But your father... The recording stopped abruptly. Someone had cut the tape intentionally. Elias stared at the machine silently. My father did what? Before anyone could answer, Officer Lena's radio exploded with panic. Shots fired near Charles Bridge. Multiple officers down. Suspect possibly Captain Novak. Elias grabbed his coat instantly. Rain poured heavily across the city as police vehicles raced toward the bridge. By the time Elias arrived, flashing lights reflected across the river below. Bodies of 2 officers lay motionless near abandoned patrol cars, and in the center of the bridge stood Captain Novak, alone. Rain soaked his clothes while he pointed a pistol at his own head. Elias slowly approached him. "Captain." Novak looked exhausted beyond words. "You should have let this stay buried." "You murdered officers tonight?" Elias asked. Novak shook his head immediately. "No. Then who did?" Novak laughed bitterly. "The same person who always cleans up loose ends." Thunder echoed above them. Novak lowered the pistol slightly. "We created a monster at St. Dymphna, and now he wants everyone connected to it dead." Elias stepped closer. "Who is he?" Novak's eyes filled with fear. "You already know." Suddenly, a gunshot shattered the rain-soaked silence. Blood burst across Novak's chest. He collapsed instantly onto the bridge stones. Police officers shouted around Elias. Marek searched the rooftops with his weapon raised. But the shooter was gone. Novak coughed weakly while blood filled his mouth. Elias knelt beside him quickly. "Who?" Novak grabbed Elias's coat with trembling fingers. "The survivor." His voice broke apart. "He's coming for you next." Then Novak died in Elias's arms while rain washed blood across the bridge. Rain hammered the city through the entire night. Captain Novak's death spread across every news station by morning. The official story blamed an unstable former officer connected to multiple murders. But Elias knew the truth was far worse. Someone powerful still controlled the shadows behind St. Dymphna, and now almost everyone connected to the project was dead. Inside the investigation room, silence hung heavily in the air. Photographs covered the walls from floor to ceiling. Victims, hospital staff, children from the experiments, old government officials. At the center of everything stood one name, Anna Keller. Elias stared at the child's photograph again, the innocent girl whose death had become a symbol of revenge. Eva sat quietly near the window wrapped in a blanket. For the first time since meeting her, she looked calm. "He'll contact you soon," she whispered. Elias turned toward her. "How do you know?" "Because you're the last piece." Before Elias could ask more, Officer Marek entered quickly carrying a file. "We found Novak's safe house." Elias stood immediately. "Where?" "Outside the city near the mountains." An hour later, they arrived at an abandoned church hidden deep in the forest. Cold wind moved through broken stained glass windows. Dust covered the wooden floors. Novak had hidden here recently. Food cans still sat on the table beside lit candles burned halfway down. Then Marek discovered a locked trapdoor beneath the altar. Elias forced it open carefully. Stone stairs descended into darkness below the church. The underground chamber smelled ancient and damp. Dozens of boxes filled the room. Hospital files, cassette tapes, financial documents, evidence Novak had secretly collected for years. Elias opened one folder slowly. Inside were payment records connected to St. Dymphna, private investors, government grants, corporate accounts. Then he saw the signature at the bottom of multiple pages. Adrian Voss, his father. Elias felt physically sick. His father had not simply funded the project. He helped create it. Marek stared at him carefully. "You didn't know." Elias said nothing. His entire childhood suddenly felt false. Every lesson, every memory. His father had built a career pretending to help troubled children while secretly financing human experiments. Then, Eva found another box in the corner. Inside rested dozens of audio tapes labeled with children's names. One tape carried no label except a black symbol burned into the plastic. Elias inserted it into an old recorder nearby. Static filled the chamber. Then a child's voice spoke softly. "My name is Daniel." Eva froze instantly, her face lost all color. "That's him," she whispered. "The survivor." The tape continued. "They said Anna died because of me. They told me I should have burned with her." The child's breathing shook violently. "But I remember who locked the doors. I remember who watched us scream. And I remember the people who paid for it." Silence followed briefly. Then an adult voice replaced the child's recording. "Cold, calm, controlled. Detective Voss. You spent your life protecting your father's legacy, but tonight you will finally see what he built." A loud buzzing sound echoed suddenly through the underground chamber. Marek looked upward immediately. Gas. Thin smoke poured slowly from vents in the ceiling. Eva backed away in panic. "He found us." Elias grabbed the files quickly. "Move!" But before they reached the stairs, explosions erupted above them. The church shook violently. Burning debris crashed into the chamber entrance. The only exit collapsed beneath fire and stone. They were trapped underground while flames consumed the church above them. Smoke poured through the collapsed staircase as fire spread across the church above. Dust filled the underground chamber. Eva coughed violently beside the fallen debris while Marek searched desperately for another exit. "There has to be a way out," he shouted. Elias forced himself to stay calm despite the heat rising around them. The walls trembled with every explosion above. Someone wanted the evidence destroyed forever. Then Elias noticed old tunnel markings carved into the stone behind stacked boxes. A hidden passage. He pulled the crates aside quickly. A narrow corridor appeared behind them, descending deeper underground. Marek stared at it. "You think this leads out?" Elias grabbed a flashlight. "It's our only chance." The hidden tunnel smelled ancient and damp. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling as they moved through darkness. Behind them, the church groaned under collapsing fire. Eva walked silently beside Elias, her breathing uneven. Finally, she spoke. "Daniel built these tunnels years ago." Elias looked at her carefully. "He planned everything. He spent decades preparing, watching, collecting evidence, killing anyone involved." Marek shook his head angrily. "That doesn't justify murder." Eva lowered her eyes. "You didn't hear children burning alive." Silence followed. No one answered her. The tunnel eventually opened into a massive underground chamber beneath the mountain ruins of St. Dymphna itself. Elias froze immediately. The old psychiatric institute still stood above them in darkness. Broken walls, collapsed towers, burned windows staring like empty eyes into the storm outside. They had returned to where everything began. Lightning illuminated the ruins briefly, and someone stood waiting in the center courtyard. Tall, black coat, motionless beneath the rain. Daniel, the survivor. Elias stepped forward slowly. "You killed all of them." Daniel removed his hood calmly. His face carried deep scars across one side from old burns, but his eyes remained cold and steady. "They killed us first." Thunder rolled across the mountains. Daniel looked toward the ruined hospital behind him. "Do you know what children sound like when doors are locked during a fire?" Elias said nothing. "Your father knew." Daniel's voice sharpened with hatred. He watched everything happen. He paid them to continue. Marek raised his weapon carefully. "It ends tonight." Daniel laughed softly. "No. It ended 30 years ago." Suddenly headlights appeared through the forest around the ruins. Several black vehicles surrounded the mountain road silently. Armed men stepped out carrying rifles. Professional, organized, not police. Eva's face turned pale instantly. "They came for the evidence." Daniel nodded slowly. "The people behind St. Dymphna survived." One armed man stepped forward holding a loudspeaker. "Drop all files and surrender immediately. No one leaves this mountain alive." Gunfire exploded seconds later. Bullets tore through the ruins as everyone scattered for cover. Stone walls shattered around Elias while flames spread through the old building. Marek returned fire beside him. "These aren't mercenaries," he shouted. "They're cleaning witnesses." Daniel moved through the chaos like a ghost, firing calmly at the attackers. For a brief moment, Elias realized the horrifying truth. The conspiracy had never ended. People were still protecting St. Dymphna even now. An explosion ripped through the lower tunnels suddenly. The ground collapsed beneath part of the courtyard. Fire surged upward through broken floors. Eva screamed as debris crashed around them. Daniel grabbed her arm and pulled her away seconds before the ceiling fell. Then another explosion separated Daniel from Elias, completely behind collapsing flames. Smoke swallowed the ruins. Armed men retreated toward the forest as the fire spread uncontrollably across the mountain. Marek grabbed Elias roughly. "We have to leave now." But Elias kept staring into the fire, searching desperately for Daniel. Through the smoke, he saw the survivor one final time standing inside the burning ruins. Then the building collapsed around him completely, and Daniel vanished into the flames. 3 weeks later, the St. Dymphna case was officially closed. News reports called Daniel a mentally unstable serial killer responsible for every murder. The government denied all allegations connected to human experimentation. Most evidence recovered from the mountain disappeared into sealed archives overnight. Witnesses were silenced. Files vanished, and the ruins of St. Dymphna were demolished completely. Prague slowly returned to normal, at least on the surface. Elias Voss no longer worked for the police. He resigned 2 days after the fire. The department thanked him publicly for his service, while quietly burying the investigation behind closed doors. Captain Novak was blamed for corruption. Daniel was declared dead inside the mountain collapse. and Anna Keller became nothing more than a forgotten name in old newspapers. But Elias knew none of it was truly over. Rain fell softly outside his apartment window as he packed the last box from his office. Photographs from the investigation still haunted his thoughts every night. The burned children, the underground rooms, the voices screaming on old cassette tapes, and his father standing beside St. Dymphna decades earlier. Elias had spent weeks searching through hidden financial records after the fire. He discovered shell companies connected to politicians, corporations, and retired officials across Europe. St. Dymphna had never been one isolated experiment. It was part of something much larger. Someone powerful had protected it for decades. A quiet knock suddenly echoed at his apartment door. Elias froze instantly. Nobody visited him anymore. Slowly he approached the entrance. No footsteps waited outside, only silence. He opened the door carefully. An envelope rested on the floor. No address, no stamp, just his name written neatly across the front. Elias picked it up slowly. Inside was a single photograph. Anna Keller as a child, the same blonde girl from every hospital file. But this picture had never appeared before. Anna stood smiling beside several other children in sunlight outside the institute years before the fire. For the first time, she looked happy. Elias turned the photograph over. Written carefully in black ink were 6 chilling words. You never found everyone involved. His heartbeat slowed. Then he noticed something else inside the envelope. A train ticket dated for the following night. Destination, Vienna. No explanation, no sender. Only another message written beneath the ticket. They are still watching you. Suddenly, the lights inside Elias's apartment flickered once. Then again, a cold feeling moved through the room. Elias slowly looked toward the rain-covered street outside his window. Across the road, beneath a broken street lamp, stood a tall figure wearing a dark coat. Motionless, watching him. Lightning flashed across the city. For one brief second, Elias saw the figure clearly. Burned scars covered one side of the face. Daniel was alive. Then the streetlight went dark, and the figure disappeared into the night.